Welcome to ET CISO TV. I'm your host, Shipra Malhotra, editor for ET CISO. In today's episode, I have two prominent cybersecurity leaders joining me. One is a CISO and the other is a technology provider, but both sharing a great passion for cybersecurity. Please join me in welcoming Vishal Salvi, Chief Information Security Officer and Head of Cybersecurity Practice at Infosys, and Anil Valluri, Managing Director and Regional VP for India and SAARC at Palo Alto Networks. We will talk about how the rules of the game have changed for cybersecurity and what the future trends look like. Welcome, gentlemen. So one thing is that the outlook towards cybersecurity has definitely changed, and we are not really going back. We are just only it's going to change further. We are not going back on the old outlook of cybersecurity. So Vishal, what in your opinion? So therefore, the rules of the game have changed for the CISOs. So going forward, what, according to you, what is your outlook on cybersecurity, and how has personally your outlook on cybersecurity changed over the last 1.5 years? And what, according to you, will be the new rules of the game as far as cybersecurity is concerned?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. See, basically, one of the things that we were already getting into before pandemic was in the regime of uh, a significant rise in the number of vulnerabilities that are coming across the years, right? Similarly, the refresh cycles of the technology refresh cycles are shrinking. Right? So what was earlier we used to upgrade a particular operating system maybe in 3 years or 4 years. Now it is happening in half that time. Okay. So with as a result of this, this is obviously was growing the attack threat surface significantly, right? And when you look at it in terms of the automation and the ability to have a deep visibility over your assets, that was because of the rise of these two trends. That ability was diminishing, week on week and months on months because of the fact that the attack threat surface will grow. Obviously, what has happened is that when we looked at pandemic as a situation, there was a significant dispersion of your assets from being network centric, data center centric to being any place, anywhere, and so that the problem actually become much more complex. Okay, so what was required is to really pivot to a situation where we start looking at IT hygiene from a different lens or a different perspective, and get the technology leadership and the cybersecurity leadership together to start looking at, hey, you know what, this 95% of visibility and 95% of patching is not good enough because the threat landscapes have dramatically changed. There are more and more ransomware attacks which are increasing, and they are also indiscriminate attacks. They are not targeted attacks. So what do we need to do? And we need to recalibrate our approach and our tolerance towards allowing 5% of your assets or 10% of your assets going unpatched or undiscovered. That is no longer an acceptable or a tenable situation. So that is, I think, the most fundamental change that has happened post pandemic, right? Where organizations which have realized that you need to really change and you need to strive and aim for 100% patching and 100% visibility of your asset, I think is a bare minimum now. And those who are able to do that are are feeling more assured about how they're managing cybersecurity of your organization. And those who are not are the ones who are, you know, going on the risky path of being not sure what is going to hit them in future, right? Including some basic fundamental things like, for example, multi-factor authentication, right? So So when Anil talked about these devices and the trust that we need to have on the users who are connecting to your environment, it's no longer about trusting them. It's about ensuring that you identify them and you authenticate them and you make them accountable for the activities that they are performing, right? And so having the basic foundation of multi-factor authentication in place, making sure that your devices that are connecting to your network, to your critical and confidential and IP assets, are managed devices, which means you control, what actually happens on those devices. And no matter how many, anybody, even if somebody tries to exfiltrate data or tries to do anything, it will not allow, because you error-proof security when it comes to your managed devices. And then when it comes to unmanaged devices, you give limited access and not access to your kingdom. So that's the broad construct, and that's one most fundamental change that I think has happened in pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
Great, thanks. So I will actually come back to you, in terms of how automation, can be a great enabler for cyber resiliency. But before that, Anil, do you kind of resonate with the kind of threats that Vishal pointed out, and also you must be interacting with a lot of other CISOs, and you have a unit 42 where you do a lot of which does a lot of research around the kind of cyber threats that are as they ebb and rise. So, what are the trends that you are seeing? Some distinct trends pre remote working, or rather pre pandemic and post the shift. Are there any distinct trends that you see before and after?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, Vishal is the best person to give you the perspective from the trenches. I would say, I'm not a practitioner in that sense, but we have an industry view, which I'll give you. Fundamentally, the pandemic has altered a few things forever, right? We are exposing our assets a lot more than ever before to the network, right? We put all our applications, all our users, all our infrastructure, everything is on connected in the system, in the cloud. You can call it on the internet, call it network, what have you. But the attack surface has seriously increased. We used to be well protected, cocooned in our own data centers. Now it is, you're there in the open. Therefore, cybersecurity is the way that you protect yourself. And we see that the more you are exposed, the more is the options for people to go and grope around and see where is the weakness and sense that. This is, I'm reminded of the Jurassic Park, the velociraptors who keep poking and seeing where is the weak point, and then you find a weak point and then go enter that. So that is fundamentally the first issue. The second issue is that the remote workforce that we've seen, you are actually trusting your people, your partners, the extended ecosystem to say that, you're believing what they are saying, who they are, right? And you have access to. Earlier, we used to limit access to certain set of applications, certain very defined ones, but now everybody being remote, you have to give some key applications as well to access. And that is causing issues because at home, you are in a very different situation. Your kid uses the laptop, your wife uses sometimes the laptop, you're doing some shopping on that. So there are multi-use profiles that get set up. So the idea is, how do you control and how do you restrict the access, and how do you silo them to only access applications and data that is dependent to them, and also in that sense trust them, right? Zero trust is the model that is evolving because of that. You have to prove everything, that you are what you are and who you're saying what you are, and you are accessing what you need to. So that is the second part. The third part is the devices, the mobile, say what you, or IoT devices, that they have a lot lesser, particularly IoT, have a lot lesser security construct. So you need to have a layer which is actually monitoring them and then making sure that you are not compromising your security because of some IoT device on the edge. So these trends are really the ones that is causing issues, and particularly India from a geopolitical standpoint. We have state actors and threat actors who are doing a lot of things. And we've seen nearly 2000+% increase in ransomware attacks, right? Both in number of attacks as well as the quantum of money that they are asking. So the average now talks about $2.5 million plus. So it is significant. Therefore, and the fourth we see is the culture of security. It is no amount of technology, no amount of protection can solve it. It has to be everybody needs to be aware and needs to be sensitive when you're operating from office or from home. The culture of people, they say the people, process, and technology, right? People process, people part is the biggest thing, and we need to get that culture of particularly in India. We've seen, we've been lax. We give our pin number to our driver to go and get cash, and we give the bartender at the restaurant to go and use our credit card and use the pin. We've been very lax, and that brings us the whole narrative of awareness, and the attendant risks are really center stage. So we see the pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, there is a huge awareness on cybersecurity, and people are conscious of that, both from a attack surface, threat surface perspective, as well as the number of attacks and the repercussions that are going to happen. Today, you can lose not just money, but you can lose your brand, you can lose your customers, you can lose positioning. A lot of things are at risk. So from our perspective, we see that trend pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. There is a huge focus on cybersecurity, on particularly in these areas that I mentioned.
Right. So also when you mentioned that 100% visibility and 100% patching, for instance, I mean, that is the basic cyber hygiene. I think so that has become non-negotiable. So there was a time when companies said, let me identify my crown jewels and protect those, and those and those that are not my crown jewels. I mean, they can. I need not put in as much efforts into them, but that is not the case anymore, because the threat can come in through those non-crown jewels as well. So in that sense, because when you need 100% visibility, 100% protection, I mean that manually, of course, it's a humongous task. So in that case, Vishal, how critical does automation become for you, for an organization of your scale and spread?
Yeah, so the whole world of cybersecurity has been heavily dependent on automation. All the cybersecurity tools that we use are basically nothing but automating things that we could otherwise have to do manually, right? That has been a foundation of this domain. But I think when we talk about hyper automation, we're talking about, okay, so yes, we have deployed these tools, and they're doing a significant amount of automation for what you would have done manually. But now, how do I orchestrate them? And how do I don't even need to have highly technical individuals start, working on these tools and taking data from one place and putting into another. So then we start looking at a hyper automation, or a second layer on top of that called an orchestrator, which starts really looking at all of these and then saying that, now I need to look at this information and I need to see how I can automate it, which otherwise was done by human beings. So in a way, challenging anything which is not adding any value, which is monotonous, right, can be automated. I mean, that's the philosophy. So for example, in the old days, when we look at a SOC analyst at a level 1, there was fair amount of automation happening in terms of looking at the logs and looking at the alerts and then finding out really incidents. But once the incidents were identified, there was somebody who was reading out what was in that incident and then going on to some table and trying to look at some more information, and then going into a third system and then looking at these two elements and making a configuration change so that incident lifecycle is managed. All of this is very predictable. It is very clear SOP. It does not require any cognitive thinking to execute that. It can be done in a very mundane manner. So all of that can be automated, right? And that's the orchestration layer that we're talking about, which is the next level of enabler to help us to take out and take out the people part of it from those non-value adding work and use them for more cognitive thinking kind of and engineering work. And those things can happen automatically. So I think that's really the phase we are in right now.
Right.
I would add, Shipra, that advent of technologies in a connected world, which includes cloud, which includes ability to access data, and with the AI and ML models, you'll be able to figure out a lot of automation is now possible that was earlier not, right? And so you're able to figure out, and then you are able to automate, then you're going to orchestrate, right? So you know what you want to do, you know the process, and you want to respond how you want to respond. So the lesser the human interaction, better it is, because you are delaying a lot of things and you are not keeping pace with the attack surfaces or the attacker's space. So automation is key, and technologies have enabled now with the advent of data lakes, or you can call cloud, with the advent of AI, ML models easily accessible. So we are now able to do a lot more predictive modeling and able to beat out some of those attacks rather than be reactive. After a while. As a manual, imagine the level of automation today is so high that millions of events and thousands of events are being managed automatically. It is well nigh impossible in a manual model, which we used to do before, right? And that is the only way to scale, and keep pace with the attack, and then how you prevent that. The automation, AI, ML, data lakes, access, cloud, those are the ones. And then how do you use them? How do you orchestrate them? How do you respond? So clearly what Vishal is saying, this hyper automation is the one now. And that's a lot of it is enabled purely because of now the technologies that we have at our disposal.
So how many companies, Anil, are you seeing that are moving from automation to hyper automation? Because especially the large scale organizations already have some layer of automation. How many of them are you like? Are they sitting on the fence, or are they moving to hyper automation? What is your take on that? What do you see in the industry?
A lot of people have implemented this SIEM model, right? Security, information event management. Those are again lot manual. Now people are definitely moving on to XOAR, that we call it, extended SOAR, right? Security orchestration, automation response models. And it is is it conscious? Sometimes it is not conscious. You're actually keeping pace with technology and moving on to newer technologies, and that gets you a lot of this automation inbuilt. And people may not realize that it may not be sometimes intentional, but we see all large organizations going for this model because it clearly becomes unmanageable. You can't have thousands of people in your SOC trying to look at the alerts and manage the events. It's not possible. So clearly, Infosys is the early adopter. They are the leading edge of technology in terms of both giving it to their customers as well as adapting themselves. So I think it's Infosys showing the way, but a lot of people are trying to follow.
Great. Thank you so much. It was great talking to both of you.
Thank you, Shipra. Nice talking to you. Vishal, thanks for your time.
Thank you.